The last day of 8th grade pulsed with a manic energy, a swirling vortex of relief, burgeoning teenage angst, and a peculiar kind of bittersweet farewell. Our middle school, an architectural beast sprawling across acres, housed well over 1,000 students, a fact that made its final day rituals feel like carefully orchestrated chaos. The yearbook signing, usually a cherished tradition, became a prime example. To manage the sheer volume, teachers collected our yearbooks, circulating them through different classrooms. It was a logistical necessity, but also a system inherently flawed, ripe for the seeds of adolescent malice to take root. And they did. I knew of several kids who seized the opportunity to scrawl truly vicious, anonymous messages to their unsuspecting peers. When my own yearbook was finally handed back, a worn, dog-eared chronicle of the past year, I clutched it like a precious artifact. I retreated to a quiet corner of the buzzing hallway, eager to devour the goofy notes and heartfelt goodbyes penned by my friends. Each page turned was a step further into the summer, a promise of freedom. But as my gaze swept across one particular page, something snagged my attention, pulling me up short. Below the smiling, unfamiliar face of someone I couldn't place, a stark, unsettling signature stood out. Samuel Robinson III. The name felt alien, yet instantly, profoundly significant. It etched itself into my memory, a peculiar brand that would not fade. His message, stark against the glossy page, was chilling in its brevity and absolute lack of context. "HAGS I'll be seeing you again." My mind reeled. I had never, not once, exchanged a single word with anyone named Samuel, let alone this specific Samuel. Confusion warred with a prickle of unease. But what could I do? The final bell had rung. The school year was officially over. He was a ghost from a book, an anomaly. I tried to rationalizing it away, chalking it up to a bizarre prank from some eccentric kid, or perhaps just an honest mistake in the sprawling yearbook chaos. Either way, I closed the book, trying to close the door on the unsettling encounter. For a few hours, at least, it worked. As twilight bled into a deep, starless night, I was cocooned in the familiar comfort of my basement, hosting the annual end-of-year sleepover with my 3 best friends, Kevin, David, and Kieran. The air was thick with the scent of Doritos and the frantic clicks of Call of Duty controllers. Our parents' bedroom was 3 floors above, granting us a blissful sense of unsupervised freedom. The volume of our excited shouts and laughter was probably criminal. Sometime just before 2 a.m., amidst a particularly intense round, a sharp, insistent knock echoed from the storm door. It was a sound entirely out of place, an unwelcome rupture in our late-night sanctuary. The chaotic energy in the room instantly evaporated, replaced by an unnerving silence. Our eyes, wide with a mixture of confusion and apprehension, met in the dim glow of the TV screen. Who the hell would knock on the storm door at this hour? It spoke of an unnerving intimacy, implying either someone desperate not to wake my parents, or someone who knew we were specifically down here in the basement. Or, most disturbingly, both. The knocking resumed, a persistent, rhythmic cadence that seemed to drill directly into our skulls. Kieran, ever the boldest, and to my immediate regret, blurted out, "Who's there?" His voice, usually so confident, seemed to boom in the sudden quiet. I wanted to tackle him, to clap a hand over his mouth. He had just broadcasted our presence, confirmed we were awake and accessible to whoever lurked on the other side of that door. Our basement had no external windows. It was highly unlikely they'd known we were down here before. Now, they did. After what felt like an eternity, a long, drawn-out pause followed by a cessation of the knocking, a muffled voice drifted through the storm door. "Come around to the back door," it chirped, the words delivered in a surprisingly high-pitched, almost genuinely cheerful tone. It sounded like a friend, a peer, eager to join our late-night revelry. It was undeniably a teenager's voice, too, and not one feigning a higher pitch. A cold tendril of fear snaked its way up my spine. My friends, however, seemed strangely unfazed, almost thrilled by the bizarre intrusion. They began to insist, almost gleefully, that I at least investigate. Despite my growing dread, their combined pressure, a silent challenge to my courage, eventually wore me down. We crept upstairs, each step measured and deliberate, a futile attempt to muffle our ascent. My heart thrummed against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence of the house. I approached the back door slowly, my breath held. Through the narrow, frosted pane of glass beside the door, a shadowy figure coalesced under the dim, yellow glow of the porch light. I edged closer, my face practically pressed against the glass, and then, his features sharpened into horrifying clarity. My jaw nearly hit the floor. It was him, Samuel Robinson III, the kid from my yearbook. The impossible, unsettling connection slammed into me. My friends, still caught in the bizarre novelty of the situation, instinctively reached for the doorknob. "No," I hissed, my voice barely a whisper, yet sharp with newfound terror. "I know who it is." I quickly, breathlessly, explained the cryptic yearbook message. Their carefree, almost excited expressions dissolved into a shared tableau of bewilderment and growing unease. Keep in mind, Sam was still standing there, a silent, unsettling sentinel, and he could undoubtedly see us through the glass. He must have registered the palpable shift in my demeanor, the sudden fear clouding my eyes, because he began to motion, a slow, deliberate sweep of his hand, towards the kitchen window on the side of the house. He wanted me to come over there. Looking back, it's hard to explain why none of us took the situation more seriously. I think it was the sheer absurdity of it all, combined with the fact that it wasn't some hulking, menacing stranger, but a kid, seemingly just a kid from our own school. Still, the thought of opening that door to him was unthinkable. Instead, I moved towards the kitchen window, my friends trailing behind me, keeping a wary distance. I cracked it open, just a sliver, letting in the cool night air, and the unsettling presence of Samuel. He walked over, his eyes unnervingly fixed on mine. "What do you want?" I managed, my voice thin despite my efforts. "Oh, I recognize you from our yearbook." A slow smile, unnervingly wide in the dim light, spread across his face. "Oh," he said, his voice still surprisingly light, almost playful. "So you got my message." He formally introduced himself as Sam. Then, his words twisted into something deeply disturbing. He had always watched me from afar, he claimed, implying a history I was entirely unaware of. A history that made my skin crawl. He spoke of how we could have been good friends. I nodded, a forced, placating gesture, praying to appease him, to de-escalate whatever strange scenario this was. There was, of course, zero chance I would ever willingly befriend this kid under any circumstances. I didn't want to press him too hard, too soon. But one question burned in my mind, an urgent need for answers. "How did you know where I lived?" He didn't respond. The silence that followed was heavy, pregnant with an unspoken threat. Before I could think of another way to diffuse the tension, David, bless his reckless heart, blurted out, "You're a creepy stalker. Piss off." Sam's smile vanished. His head tilted, a bizarre, bird-like movement, as if he genuinely couldn't comprehend David's words. Then, with terrifying speed, his expression contorted into something I can only describe as pure, unadulterated hatred. He transformed in an instant, shedding the guise of passive, almost friendly strangeness, revealing a raw, aggressive fury. He began to scream, his voice rising, venomous. He screamed about hating my friends, about how we should all die, about my ex hating me, spewing random, intimate details that he had absolutely no right to know, details that hammered home the chilling reality of his unspoken watching. He lunged towards the window, his hand slamming against the glass, trying to force the crack open. I jammed it shut, locking it with a frantic click. He snarled, a guttural, animalistic sound, and began to bang on the glass, a furious, desperate rhythm. The window rattled violently, threatening to shatter at any second. I genuinely believed he was moments away from breaking through. The cacophony must have been immense, because within seconds, a cascade of footsteps pounded down the stairs. My parents, roused from their sleep, burst into the basement, demanding to know what in God's name was going on. It was the moment of interruption, the sudden arrival of adult authority, that finally broke Sam's terrifying trance. He bolted, disappearing into the darkness of our backyard as quickly as he had appeared. I stumbled over my words, trying to explain the unbelievable chain of events to my stunned parents. My dad, still in his underwear, raced outside, a flashlight beam cutting through the night. He returned a few minutes later, breathless, shaking his head. No sign of the kid. He had vanished without a trace. For reasons I still cannot fully grasp, my parents didn't call the police that night. Perhaps they, too, struggled to comprehend the surreal encounter, or perhaps they simply wanted to believe it was a disturbed kid's isolated outburst. They told us to go back to sleep, promising to deal with the school in the morning, giving the kid the benefit of the doubt, however misplaced it seemed. The next morning, armed with our account, my parents contacted the school. That's when the truly disturbing truth began to unravel. Samuel Robinson, it turned out, had been expelled weeks before the school year ended. He should have never, under any circumstances, been on school grounds on the last day. His picture, a ghostly inclusion in my yearbook, was only there because the yearbooks had been printed before his expulsion was finalized. This chilling detail solidified the horror. He had somehow snuck into the school, evaded detection, all with the sole purpose of finding my yearbook and writing that singular, haunting message. It freaked me out beyond belief. Despite our efforts, and the school's subsequent attempts to investigate, Sam remained untraceable. It was as if he and his parents had simply ceased to exist. The entire incident was a significant breach of security, a deeply unsettling event that the school, understandably, did its best to keep under wraps. To this day, the most terrifying, lingering question is how he knew where I lived. That single, unanswered question gnaws at me more than anything else. The prevailing theory, the one whispered in hushed tones between my parents and me, is that he was a mentally challenged, deeply troubled young boy who, for reasons we can't fathom, developed a strange, unsettling obsession with me. He had been stalking me, perhaps for weeks, perhaps for months, a silent, unseen shadow in my life. My parents worried for weeks, their vigilance a constant, heavy presence. It's something we rarely talk about now. The memory is too raw, too uncomfortable. But living in that same house, knowing what happened, has never, ever felt the same since. The echoes of that night still linger, a constant reminder of the thin veil between ordinary life and inexplicable terror.